Hello, I'm Blaze and welcome back to Warframe. Today I felt like looking at something with some fairly unique mechanics, and as such, I'd like to introduce you all to Warframe's very own double-barreled shotgun, the Tigris. The Tigris has a mastery rank requirement of 4, and the blueprints can be purchased from the market for 40,000 credits, with the whole recipe in the foundry afterwards being a further 25,000 credits, along with 900 circuits, 1,200 salvage, 1,200 rubido, and 3 Oricun cells, which will admittedly probably put off newer players as that is all rather expensive. Alternatively, if you want to turn your ninja into a marine right now, you can buy the weapon pre-built, along with the pre-installed catalyst and its own weapon slot for 150 platinum. The Tigris has some interesting base stats. The base damage is actually 200, the largest reported base damage per shot of all shotguns to date, not counting the charge shot of the Dragoon. The spread of which is primarily slash damage at 160, with impact and puncture damage both being just 20. This damage is spread over only 4 pellets per shot, which is actually quite low for shotguns, and the Tigris has a surprisingly tight default pellet spread, tied with the Heck and Sobek for accuracy. Though as with most shotguns, the pellets have damage attenuation, meaning long-range hits will deal significantly less damage compared to up close, though it can still work with the Tigris thanks to how high the base damage is. The critical stats are not really worth worrying about, with a 5% crit chance and a 2.0 times multiplier, but its base status chance sits at a very respectable 25%. You may have noticed I kind of skipped over the fire rate, magazine size and reload time. The reload time sits at a relatively fast 1.8 seconds, and the reported fire rate is 2.0 rounds per second. However, the magazine size is just 2. On paper, even considering each shot from this thing kind of hits like a truck, this might be starting to look even worse than the Strun in spite of its raw damage. But fear not, dear viewer, because that fire rate statistic is a big fat liar. The Tigris has a so far unique trigger type which the game refers to as duplex auto. When the weapon is equipped, a mouse down event or pressing whichever button or key is relevant to your system will fire one barrel, and releasing the button will fire the other barrel. The delay between being able to fire the second shot is 0. Or perhaps more accurately, the only limiting factor is the game engine registering the button press on one frame and recognizing the button being released on the next frame. This means that with a quick button press you can essentially fire both barrels almost simultaneously to lay down the damage of both shells on one target, irrespective of what the fire rate says it is. Which means that the Tigris' burst DPS is potentially a near instant 400 base damage, and that's going to go up pretty goddamn high as you add your damage mods. The main determining factor for sustained DPS is actually the reload speed, which sadly can only be increased with the tactical pump mod by 30%. You can also hold the button down between shots to fire at 2 targets instead, which admittedly takes some getting used to, but it works. As far as modding goes, I like to throw status chance mods in there to take advantage of the 25% base status chance, though if you want raw damage instead you will need to add an extra dash polarity or 2. Primed point blank, though expensive to rank up and limited to when Barrow Katir has them available, is actually comparable to Serration, so if you want to use shotgun seriously, I absolutely recommend picking this up. Vicious spread downside actually doesn't affect the Tigris that much, so go ahead and put that on there for more damage. And finally, for base damage, Blaze is a mod that you can get from Nightmare missions that adds 60% base damage, as well as 60% fire damage afterwards. So on pretty much any shotgun I'd say put that at the end. The fire damage can sometimes interfere with elemental combos, especially against Corpus, but for the sake of base damage, you should try to work around it where you can. And of course, specifically for the Tigris, a tactical pump to get shells in this thing more quickly. I really do wish the base reload time was even just marginally faster because it's a little slow even with tactical pump, but it is what it is. Maybe we'll get a primed tactical pump at some point like we got for fast hands. Tainted Shell is an option if you really want to counteract the increased spread from Vicious Spread. The reduction in fire rate has literally no effect on the Tigris thanks to its duplex trigger mechanics. However, I haven't really felt the need to add it on, as the Tigris' spread is quite narrow anyway, even with the application of Vicious Spread. I was also curious how the Tigris interacted with magazine capacity increase mods, so I did some science to find the answers. The results were interesting. The fire rate of 2 rounds per second is how long you need to wait between the end of firing the second barrel the first time, and then starting off with the new burst, similar to how burst fire weapons work. However, interestingly, I think something is slightly broken with the detection, as if you bind firing to your scroll wheel and move it fast enough you can actually unload all 4 shots at once. Though getting the extra capacity requires dedicating mod slots to it, which would honestly be better spent on more damage. So it's all rather academic. By the way, short history lesson on my experiences with shotguns in Warframe. While I was in the tutorial mission, I selected the Mark I Strun as my starter weapon. Good God, that weapon was atrocious. I had to save up the 25,000 credits to get a weapon worth using in my primary slot for that, and the experience turned me off using any shotguns at all for like a few hundred hours. I did eventually give others a try though, which is where the Tigris came in, and showed me that not all shotguns in this game are garbage. Just the Strun. Fuck the Strun. That said, while I appreciate the Tigris for rescuing me from shotgun hell, I must unfortunately say that taking this thing to high-level void missions can be an exercise in frustration due to the fact that while it does a massive amount of burst damage, its lack of sustained damage really puts a damper on its late-game performance. Not to mention, it is a powerful single-shot type weapon, and we all know the problem with those kinds of weapons, right? Say it with me, ladies and gentlemen. Fuck nullifiers! Bombard knockdown nonsense doesn't really help much either. The Tigris isn't for everyone, and the small magazine capacity will absolutely cause it to struggle at high levels, similarly to what happens with the Cybaris, but even so, this shotgun is just kind of fun. With some proper love and attention, it can work surprisingly well, and it does have a pretty high status chance. So with the release of Fire and Ice dual stat mods as possible Spy 2.0 rewards, that has become a viable option for the general populace, which is great news in itself. Plus, the high bias towards slash damage means that it tends to reduce your enemies to a pile of giblets, which is oddly satisfying too. Get this thing in your arsenal and play Doom music in the background. You know you want to. Thank you all for watching my look at the Tigris. Any comments are appreciated, and I hope to see you around next time. There still isn't much of a back catalogue yet, but you can go watch my overview of the Kastanas and Sancti Kastanas, as well as my overview of the Tiburon down below. Either way, thank you all for taking the time to watch. Good luck, have fun, and take care.